Welcome to the Columbus Municipal School District Community Meeting on creating a safe community for thriving schools. We're going to start this meeting with a moment of silence, and we're going to ring a bell for those who have been directly impacted by gun violence in our community. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Bless the child who suffers. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Bless the young without mothers. This child is hungry, and that child's on crack. One plays with a gun while the other takes a bullet in his back. When the child's spirit is broken and he feels all hope is gone, oh, help us find the strength to carry on with a little hope and faith. We can understand all our children need is love and us to hold their little hands. Just a little hallelujah, hallelujah. Bless the child who suffers. I want to thank CJ for ringing the bell. If you were counting, CJ rang that bell 71 times. We've had 71 students who have been directly impacted, whether they are deceased, they were victims of gunshot victims, or they are incarcerated due to gun violence in this community. He rang that bell 71 times. The Anna Casey Foundation says that each of us have 300 biological relatives. Now, if you do the math, that's 2,100 people who have been directly impacted. That doesn't include friends, that doesn't include teachers, but 2,100 people who could have been directly impacted by gun violence in our community. Thank you, CJ. We're going to ask Ms. Rowland, who is a teacher, um, to give a testimonial about her experience with gun violence.
Thank you all for coming here tonight. I'm sad that this is the reason, but I'm so happy that we could come together, to put our minds and hearts together to think of something to help our community. This lovely lady right here was my student. Her name is Jada. And I taught, she was a gifted student at our school in spirit, and so smart and precocious. and just a beautiful young lady. And this summer, while we were doing summer school, she was there, and she gave me a hug that morning and hugged goodbye in the afternoon. And I got home that night and got the telephone call that someone had seen on the news that that she had passed away because she had been shot. And going back into the classroom the next day with her classmates that had gone to school with her during the school year, but also her new friends that she had made in our summer school program. It's very hard to explain to them because there's no explanation really. But to talk to them about what had happened or answer any questions that they might have had. And I was just telling someone about this today. We happened to be doing a project in this class about history. And the students in the summer, they were looking at their own personal biographies up until that point, and they were talking about interviewing a character from the past. And we had started it, before this had happened. And when they had been talking to the character from the past and explaining how things were different and how they were the same as the historical time when they had been living. And after this happened, the kids had written the dialogue that some things really hadn't changed at all. And so I don't want our kids to feel that way. I want our kids to feel safe at school, safe at home. They should be able to expect that. And as I was coming here today and I was thinking about all the smart people that would be here and all the things that people would bring and ideas to how we could come together to prevent this from happening, because this is just one of my children, but I've taught in this district for 14 years, and quite a few of my students have appeared in the paper because they were the one that fired the gun. And my heart breaks for them too, because I did when they were in the first grade. And so all that I can say is that when I talk to my kids, we just talk about how we never want to be a person that does this, where we're saying, I put the blame here. We could be a person that responds to what bothers us by saying it's your fault, it's this. But when we point our fingers, I always tell them there's always 3 fingers pointing back at us. And so I want us to come together, and I vow I'm here. I want to teach our kids. I want to be here instead of with a finger pointed and blame. I want to have my hands open with hope, because we do have hope. Our kids have hope. They love our community. We love them. And I know that we can work together to make sure that this does not happen anymore. Our kids deserve that. Our families deserve that. And again, I just thank you, Dr. Labad and Mayor, and all of the people who represent the community for coming in to just help us think about what we can do to just do better. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to start this meeting by recognizing my great administration team for all the hard work they've done and what they've endured during this pandemic and the recent issues we've had to deal with in the school district. Your bravery, your tenacity, Your hard work and your commitments to students are to be commended. And if we can, as a community, give them a round of applause for the work that they do. I'd also like to thank the members of the audience who came tonight to help collaborate to build a safer community for everyone. Gun violence is no longer a distant concern we can watch on the news from our living rooms. We no longer can mourn from afar or send thoughts and prayers to victims and families we don't know. It's happening in our city, and it's happening to our children. It's infiltrating our schools. And there's no time for blaming and finger pointing, ignoring the problem, or just staying silent. It's an imperative now that we join together to problem solve, build trust, move forward, and to ensure the safest community for everyone in Columbus, but most importantly for our children. The impact of gun violence, especially with the youth, traumatizes our children and our environment. It makes our school or school district a triage for the wounded, including the shooter and those who have been shot or killed. And what about the innocent children that linger the hallway and hear the news of gun violence and lack the concentration to learn or fall in the depths of fear and anxiety? And what about the educators that walk the hall, work the metal detectors, run down the madness, counsel the kids, and cry to tears for the children that are victims or have committed themselves to a life of crime? You see, we have to mourn the inevitable sadness of the child, shooter, and the children who have been shot and killed. This is a Columbus community issue, but it's so much bigger. When a child dies at the hand of another child with a gun, and we allow that, what have we become? What have we become if we accept active shooter drills as a way for life for children to go to school? I can no longer be silent in my role about the need of protective safeguards we need to protect students and educators. We handle gun violence because safety is our priority, but we are not equipped to deal with AR-15s or assault weapons in our schools nor in our communities. Until the most vulnerable, our children, are the top priority in this community, change cannot happen. Public education and safety must be a priority. I promised myself when Jada died, which was a culminating event for all students that have died in gun violence in this district, that her death or their deaths of every child lost would not be in vain. I verbalized that promise to the mayor, a few of my board members, and to her dad, Marcus Brewer. The fury in my heart is for the students and the educators that have been impacted by gun violence. Sometimes I think I'm naive in thinking that the world should stop when a child dies from gun violence. But maybe it's just me, it's just us, and the rest of the educators whose world just comes to a stop. We are not afraid of our students coming to school. Rather, we fear what may happen to them when they go home. The schools are the walls of the community, and what's happening outside is coming into our schools. We are a great community with great minds, and we are stronger together. We're only as safe as the relationships we build, and we need everyone to find solutions to build a community for all. We are the agents of change in this community, and our issues can only be resolved by us. But we must act now. We need to be accountable for our history and be proactive to prevent further violence. We must be our own advocates for problem solving and the violence in our community. Working together is the only solution for safer schools and a safer Columbus. We must be a community for all. We owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to the future of Columbus. We are stronger together, and we are Columbus. Now I'll go over some information that we kind of summarized to discuss the things that we've done in the district for the last 3.5 years to protect our students from the trauma and emotional violence in the community. So in response to violence in the community, this is a proactive stance. Social emotional wellness is a big part of everything that we do in any community, in any school environment. So I'm just going to talk in general terms. But we do have metal detectors, and we do run them at least 3 times a week. And then we also run them after a major event in the community that may have violence or tension. So that's our plan with metal detectors. We have over 24 metal detectors. We've put several students up for expulsion due to the weapons we've found due to running the metal detectors. We're working closely with the DA's office with restorative justice. We have some teams getting ready to go to training. If you have see the sign-in sheet up front, we have a critical response team that community counseling will be working through in the community, and we have our own in-district community critical response team. We're also working for parent support or any support of people that have been victims of gun violence in the community. We want to nurture our students here, but we also want there to be nurture and support outside the school environment. We're enjoying our collaboration. Anything we learn and we get from other organizations, nonprofit or otherwise, we're sharing that information with community councils so we can help build the communities wrap around as it relates to gun violence and violence in the community. We have started hiring our local police department. They've been so supportive in assisting us in dealing with what's happening in the community. We continue to communicate with them regularly to find out information to ensure that we know what's happening the next day when an act of violence happens at night or on the weekend. And we'll be using both county and city school officials. We are actively engaged. I know Ms. Cox, one of my board members, and a couple other people will be involved with the Crime Prevention Task Force with Mr. Brooks. We did hire a behavior specialist, but we did that 3 years ago. She's going to present most of this information. And we do provide anger management for our students who display anger and aggression. Generally, when gun violence happens, it's an act of emotion. And we understand that teaching our students how to deal with emotion is an important part of stopping the problems of gun violence and violence in the community. Response to trauma, do you want to do this one?
Okay. Donna and DJ, who've come and helped us with building relationships. Of course, I'm the behavior specialist, and I've been here since July of 2019. We've assessed discipline data, community and cultural issues. Started that back in July 2019. Strategic planning on addressing social emotional wellness issues. Started that in 2019. We've been having training from Reach Mississippi with social emotional wellness, as well as positive behavior and support, systems and supports. COVID, social emotional wellness, we've been working with NISL training. We have social emotional wellness tidbits for teachers, activities, things that they can do in the classroom. We've done a qualitative needs assessment with faculty and staff in the spring of 2020 and implemented some things based on the social emotional learning standards from MDE. We've been meeting with Metro Nashville with their social emotional wellness department to discuss best practices for implementation here in Columbus. Our qualitative analysis, what did we find out? We found out that we need to build the capacity of adults, their social emotional wellness. We also need to build culture and classroom environment around social emotional wellness and focus on self-care and building relationships. And not just self-care for our students, but self-care for our adults in the buildings. Direct trauma response. So one of the things that we've done is we've COMP training, which is classroom management and organization program through Vanderbilt University. We started last summer training teachers, and then after that, we had a session where we've trained our staff to be trainers, and so we're going through a process now. All of our schools, starting in January, we'll have at least one session going on where we're training our staff on COMP, which is Classroom Management and Organizational Program, building a culture of classroom environment around social and emotional wellness. MDE put out those standards, adopted those standards last year, and we're making a conscious effort to implement that in every classroom. We say every classroom, every day. We're going to address the social and emotional needs of our students, again, every classroom, every single day. And again, focusing on self-care, not just of the students, but also of adults in the building. You know, COVID has been difficult for us all. Gun violence is difficult for us all. So focusing on our self-care. We have Building Strong Brains. They're at Columbus High School. They discuss monthly different social and emotional wellness topics. Like for October is, what's my why? Why am I here? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I an educator? Community counseling, we've been working with them for students and for behavior management, social emotional wellness sessions. They're doing that both at the alternative school and at our middle school. ACE Institute, we're working with them, which is Adverse Childhood Experiences, right? Working with our staff so that they can gain some knowledge and implement that in the classrooms. Again, DJ and Donna, we're working with them, NISL and NCEE. We have the Guided Coalition. They're also supporting our counselors. We have social emotional wellness trainings for our bus drivers, and that's very important. Our bus drivers are the first point of contact and the last point of contact for our students. So we want to make sure that they have what they need as well. Most of this we've just discussed. So the other thing is parent meetings, resources addressing education, trauma, social emotional wellness. We're having parent meetings to address those needs as well. I think the rest of that we've already discussed.
This is some information that we have obtained from our principals on their direct impact on violence in the community inside of the school environment. As you see, students seek safety in our school. We have several students that, if they've been shot or have had an act of violence at school, that they want to come to school because that's a safe place. And they generally tell us a lot that's going on in the community. They get fearful when things happen in the community when they come to school. We always try to be a source of trust for them. So they tell us things, and we're able to try to protect them as best we can in our school environment. There's a lot of anxiety among students when there's an act of violence in the community. And so it often impacts instruction, and it puts a toll on our counselor and other support, but that's our priority. Attendance is low with students return, and the discussion continues of what the acts of violence inside the school environment. Sometimes when students come back from either committing an act of violence or being a victim of act of violence, it's hard for them to do academic work. So they're there, but they're not really producing as far as what we're in the business in, which is teaching and learning. It does make the climate very nervous and defensive, especially if the crime involves relatives of students. This is a small environment, so generally acts of violence affects different families, different friendships and relationships within the building. And so, especially our middle school and high school where there's a large population, that starts to be problematic. And so those are just some of the impact that we've received from our principals. We have been working with a nonprofit organization that has worked to reduce gun violence in the community on the west and south side of Chicago. And one of the things that we've observed in the research and being involved with this nonprofit is the two keys to a community reducing gun violence in their community is a committed love for their community. And so when there's a committed love for the community and everybody's working in the same direction, then great things happen. And so that's another reason why I'm glad that we're here today. They also start with metrics. Where are we? And we're going to get into that. Where are we? How many homicides do we have? How many did we have last year? How many do we have this year? How many can we reduce next year? How can we work collectively with the Crime Prevention Task Force, with community counseling, with other third-party and nonprofit organizations to have a holistic approach to helping our students to put the guns down. And so that's all relative. Another thing is economic and job training and workforce development, giving our students hopes and opportunities from our education system to our ecosystem of workforce development in this area, of assuring that they have opportunities to not only a living wage, but to the middle class is an important part of that holistic approach. So we want to thank the CRED team and all the support of community counseling and nonprofit organization and the great organizations here that have kind of helped us through this difficult time. We're going to start next with some statistics that I think is very significant for everyone in the room. This is the Columbus crime statistic, and I want you to look at the last number because that's going to be significant. In 2020, there were 58 shootings in the city of Columbus. In 2021, there were 348, and the year's not over with. Our kids are not getting shot in school. Things are happening outside of school that are coming in. And if your breath is taken away, which should be, well, we can do this. I want everybody to remain hopeful. That's the reason why we're here today, that we want to respond to this and be able to make a difference in our communities, and it starts with all of us. I want to thank everyone, and before we start the question and answer, I would like the panel to be able to respond to the statistics or any of the information that we allowed, and then we'll take questions from the audience, and Ms. Chapman will manage that. Mayor Gaskin.
If you have a question for anyone on our panel, we have note cards back there in the back. She was saying when you were coming in, write your question down. If you have a question for anyone on our panel, go ahead and write your question down, and we'll have someone come around and pick those up. So when our next two speakers are done, we'll start with our question and answer session.
Thank you, and I want to say thank you to everyone who pulled this meeting together. This kind of stemmed from some conversations that happened several weeks ago. Since I have been mayor for about 6 months now, I have tried to spend a lot of time listening to parents, listening to students, listening to administrators, listening to our law enforcement, listening to the people in the community who have a lot of concerns about the numbers that you saw there. I think it's incumbent of us as elected officials to try to be in the communities and listening to the concerns and the ideas of solutions that so many of us need to try to find. I know there's a lot of frustration in the community about the numbers that you saw there, and I know there's a lot of concern about what's happening in the schools, what's happening on the school buses, and those are the types of things that we've got to find answers to. The statistics and the data says a lot, but what the individuals are dealing with on a daily basis in our community are where we need to try to find and help find solutions and answers. All these answers will not be found in the schools. We have to do better in our after-school programs, what we're doing in our communities. How can we relate to our students? There are a lot of people in the community who are interested in volunteering and trying to mentor to kids. I've spoken in front of students that have been arrested or in detention. One of the things I tried to say to them was, don't let these moments define the rest of your life. There are a lot of people out there who have been in your situations before, and they've come out of these, and they've been better for it. But it's incumbent of all of us as individuals in the community to be interested in trying to work with these kids and these parents who are struggling. The need is great. Finding the solutions to all these issues are difficult. And one of the things that I want to try to continue to do is try to enable those who are working on these issues long before I became mayor, is to try to help continue to keep those conversations alive, trying to listen to those who are frustrated because they feel like these things aren't happening and moving quickly enough. And so, as Dr. Labat had mentioned, it's incumbent of the community to come together, but I also appreciate the fact that there are many out there who are frustrated, many who feel like they have reached out and didn't get the response that they wanted or deserved from the leadership. I want people to know that we hear that and we appreciate that, and we don't want to be just coming at meetings like this and saying we're going to do better or we're going to work harder. We need to make sure that we're actually doing the work. I always invite people to come by and to see me at City Hall or invite me into your homes or to your communities so I can learn and listen and tell you the things that we are trying to put in place with the police department and working closely with the sheriff's department as well. But again, that's not where the answers are. The answers are in the community, trying to reach these kids where they are, make sure they have people in front of them that they can relate to and understand and encourage them. These are all very serious issues that take serious minds and serious efforts to move forward, and I'm committed to do that. I'm committed to meeting with anyone, especially those who disagree with me or want to educate me on things that I may not be aware of. I welcome that and hope to be available at any time in any place. But again, if you go back and look at those numbers, as Dr. Labat said, it should be staggering to us. I know Chief Shelton is going to delve into those numbers a little bit later too. But we shouldn't forget those, and we shouldn't think of those as numbers, but those are individuals, those are people. Those are our citizens, those are people that we care about, those are people that we love, those are people that we know. And as a community, we must come together and do better.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening. I certainly want to say I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and one of the things I want to say from the very beginning, I am a staunch, uncompromising supporter of Dr. Labat in the school system. You know, is that I talk to her frequently about a number of issues. She served on the Crime Prevention Task Force. It doesn't mean that we always agree on everything. It means that we have a dialogue that we can talk through because we're all trying to get to the same place. And so I don't go out, I don't bash the Columbus Municipal School District. I don't compare the Columbus Municipal School District with Caledonia or New Hope. I support this school district. I have a 10-year-old granddaughter in the school, but more importantly, I understand that education is one of the most important things in any community and in anyone's lives. A lot of you here are here because you struggled and got a good education, and certainly you didn't have to go through some of the things that the children are going through. I'm the chairman of the Crime Prevention Task Force. We've put together some interesting data and information. And when I presented it to the mayor and city council, I asked them if they would allow the task force to continue to operate so we could be a liaison between the mayor and council and the community. And we're going to work this, you know, we're going to work it and understand it's going to take a while. I walked out of the house yesterday evening, and Mike Perkerson, who used to own Military Hardware, he was on the porch. He said, "Leroy, come over here, I want to show you something." He says, "The other night I heard some shooting down through the neighborhood," and he says, "What does this look like in my window?" I said, "It looks like a bullet." I said, "You know, I'm going to get a hold of the chief, and maybe he can come over and see." But it's everywhere. You know, I don't have the answer for it, but I do have a couple of things I want to say. I'm going to 13 years ago, and I would hope we could do this tonight, I don't know. 13 years ago, and I see Richard Burlingame right there. He's a younger looking fella then. But 13 years ago, this picture was taken after the community came together to get a school bond issue passed to build the middle school. Now, why is this important? It's because when you look at this picture, you see black, white, young, and old, but we're all together. And they passed that bond issue by 70-some% because people in the community was committed to making it work. So 13 years it's been on my wall, and I pulled it down today to bring to you all that I hope some kind of way, Dr. Labatt, that we can put you in the center and people can surround you tonight. And Pam, we can take a picture saying that we're all in this together. And let's post this on Facebook. Let's let people see that we support our superintendent and our school district. I think that's the message we're going to have to send out, that we're all in this together, regardless of our political persuasion, our political philosophy, that we're in it together, that we're about the education of our children. I have some ideas on what we ought to do, but then I can't say that because it may not sound appropriate. You know, when we were in school, and that's been a long time ago, they discipline us, and it's not an easy task. But the thing I do want to say to you all, those that are willing, let's take a picture tonight surrounding our superintendent. And let's share this all over Facebook and throughout the community, because after this happened, they had all these pictures posted everywhere to send the message, we are better together. And so that's the one thing I would ask that we would do. The other thing, I've been talking to Representative Kabir, and I've mentioned it to Dr. Labatt and others, that we are at the stage of wanting to start a community-wide youth organization. I talked to Greg Lewis. That was years ago. Some of you remember Youthquake was an organization we had. Some of y'all remember Kids with Character with Doug McKay. An opportunity to bring these children together in a structured activity and participate. So we are getting ready to launch that. And I'm just going to take my yellow folder and pass it around. And on the back, if you're interested in being a part of forming this community-wide youth organization, put your name and telephone number, and we'll reach out to you. Because we're going to need a board of directors, an advisory board, that we can bring these children together and begin to do whatever we need to do. So again, I'm going to ask again, when this is over, for those that are willing, as the church folks said, those that are willing, let them come. Let's take a group picture, all that we can, and let's put this on the dispatch and in the packet and send this message tonight that we're all together. And on this yellow folder, just write your name, telephone number. We'll follow up. We'll have our first meeting after the beginning of the year if you're interested in helping us to start a community-wide youth organization. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I want to personally thank you guys for coming out tonight. The issues that are going on in the community, especially with our youth, I know are concerning. Your concerns concern me. So I'm Natasha Brown. I'm the Chief of Columbus Municipal School District. I'm one of several school resource officers and safety officers that service this district. So we take safety very important to us in this district. As you can see, Dr. Labatt showed you a couple of things that we're doing in the district. We're running metal detectors. That takes a lot of time and effort, and I know sometimes it can be a bit inconvenient to you all, but just know the overall goal is safety. Our job, I know a lot of people sometimes can be uncomfortable with having police officers in the schools, but you know, we're just not here to stuff and cuff them. There's a lot of training that goes into having us in the school. We're more than just police officers. We counsel these kids.
We're parents to these kids. A lot of us are from this community, and we're invested in what's going on with our children. And so we just want to let you know, I want to let you know that we're taking every precaution that we can, seeing what's going on in the community, getting information out, and trying to do all that we can to protect our kids. They are our greatest resources. I live here. So what happened to these kids ultimately affects me. My family is from here, and I want the best future possible. And the only way that we're going to have that, we're going to have to come together as a community and support these kids. We're going to have to support them. These kids are hurt, and they're trying to handle situations the best way that they think that they can. And sometimes those are not the best ways that they're handling them. But they need support. They don't need people putting them down, but they need people who are going to support them. We need your resources. We need your help. We need your time. We need your support, your ideas. We're only going to get better and have a stronger community if we come together as one. There are so many people who have come out of this school district and that are doing great things. We have a DA, we have attorneys, we have principals, we have police officers. We have a lot of people from this community that have come out of this district, and we need your support. I'm appealing to you to come and support this mission here from Dr. Labat, from the whole team. We need your support.
Good evening, everyone. When I think about why we're here, it's important that we understand that we're stronger together. It's going to take a village to raise this whole community. Mr. Brooks, I like to think about what Sir Robert Peel said in 1829 when he adopted the 9 police ethical principles, which says that the public are the police and the police are the public. The only difference between me and you is that I wear a uniform, but it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to do our job to police our community. We understand the violence. So when we look at the numbers, the reason the numbers went up is because we started keeping track of it. So every shots fired call is a police report, because we want to get the overall picture. So when there's shots fired, that don't necessarily mean someone got shot, but anytime there's a shots fired call, we're going to respond. So I want you to realize that that's our job, to respond. There are often times when people say, well, I don't want to get involved. Well, you got to get involved. We're at a point where everybody has to get involved. If we don't get involved, and then, Mr. Brooke, your favorite, we talk about the broken window theory, if we continue to let things start deteriorating, they're going to keep on deteriorating. If they start on the street corner, then they'll be in the house, and then they'll be in the house, they'll be on the block, and then it'll continue. But we can stop that. How do we stop that? By bringing our resources together. As they alluded to, it's not just a police problem, it's a community problem. Church is going to have to come together. Business is going to have to come together. The school district already took the lead. So we got to come together. We're together. It's important to me. Again, I'm a part of this community. I have grandchildren that go to school here. I have children that was raised up in the Columbus Municipal School District. So it's all important to us. What we want to try to get to is a more efficient, effective, and proactive community. And we can do it. Can we do it? So sometimes I act as a preacher, so you kind of nod your head so I can go and sit down and shut up. But again, I thank you for this, and I'm praying and I'm hoping, again, come and talk to us. We have a committee. Do come and bring the input. You're the stakeholders. So this is a piece of work that when we come together and we put together, this is something that we can all be proud of. This won't be Fred Shelton's show, Leroy Brooks' show, Kabir show. This will be our community. This is our community. We can take it back, and we can do what we need to do by bringing our resources together, putting them together, and making a better product. Thank you.
Before we begin with our questions, would anyone?
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Wellborn. I'm the Mission Support Group Commander at Columbus Air Force Base. On behalf on behalf of Colonel Seth Graham, the installation commander at the 14th Flying Training Wing, I want to say thank you for the invitation tonight. Dr. Labat, thank you for having me here to talk about some of the initiatives that we have started with Dr. Labat, as well as some of the initiatives that we have started with the community. I've always said, and Colonel Graham has always said, that we are a big part of this community. The only thing that separates us is a fence line. And we have to have that fence line around that federal property because we have a very important mission at Columbus Air Force Base, a very important national security mission, and that is training our future aviators, our future pilots to go off and ensure the safety of this nation. Our airmen do not just live on Columbus Air Force Base. They live within the local community. And I can say that what happens in the local community impacts the airmen that work and live at Columbus Air Force Base. So we have an interest to partner with the local community to ensure that we're talking with the local community, that we're sharing information with the local community, because it is important for our mission and to continue to sustain our mission at Columbus Air Force Base. So what I wanted to do was just briefly talk about three things, and there are a lot of things, but I just wanted to focus on three things that I think are very relevant to tonight's discussion that we're doing to help support the community. First and foremost, we're very appreciative of the efforts that Dr. Labat has started with Columbus Air Force Base and then with her school, the Leadership Lecture Series, and we have sent several of our airmen, and when I say airmen, I'm talking about our big A airmen. I'm talking about the ones that are in uniform like me, and I'm talking about our civilian workforce that are so critical to the success of our mission. We have sent our uniform members to the Columbus High School to talk with students about their stories, to share their stories about why they joined the Air Force and what service and why service is important to them. And it's not necessarily a recruiting pitch to come and join the Air Force, but it is a story that they can share to talk about how they came up through their lives, how the experiences they've had in their schools, the educational opportunities that they've had, and the educational opportunities that the Air Force and the U.S. government has provided to them to help keep them successful and make them successful members of our team at Columbus Air Force Base. So the hope is that when those students hear those stories, that they can look at themselves and say, I can do that. When they see aircraft flying around here, and I hope that you're looking up and seeing our T-6s, T-1s, and T-38s flying over the skies of Columbus, we hope that the students and members of the community, when they look up, they can themselves say, I can do that, or I can be a part of that. So we're very appreciative of this opportunity to come and engage in the local school districts to share these stories and to offer some encouragement to these students. The second thing is through our mission sustainment team that we have just created at Columbus Air Force Base. Most of that is focused on things that are happening in the community that will impact the flying training mission at Columbus. But another piece of this is community engagement and quality of life. And we have initiated a more robust partnership with East Mississippi Community College focused on workforce development. And we're hoping to expand that to other schools here in the local community. But part of that is sharing what we can offer to students at Columbus Air Force Base in the form of jobs, because there are some needs at Columbus Air Force Base where we do have openings and folks can come and start a career with the federal government. And East Mississippi Community College is helping us out by developing some courses for our airmen, in particular our communication squadron, as they begin to transition to a new Air Force specialty code based on the need that the Air Force has communicated and the need for the cyber mission. That is just one small piece, but we hope to kind of grow that in the future. We have gotten several meetings underway, and then next year we hope to kind of at least get a memorandum of understanding going and a charter with East Mississippi Community College to further affect that. The last thing that I will talk about is the partnership with our Security Forces Squadron, our police force that is on the installation, and the partnership that squadron has started with local law enforcement here in the community. As I said at the beginning of this, what happens in the community directly or indirectly impacts our airmen and their way of life, and will indirectly or directly impact the mission that they execute at Columbus Air Force Base. So our Security Forces Squadron has started a robust engagement process with local law enforcement. That's at the local, state, as well as at the federal level too. That has come in the form of additional training opportunities. That has also come in the form of intelligence sharing, to use a military term. Communication is key. So those agencies communicate to our squadrons what is going on in the community, and then we can communicate what is happening at Columbus Air Force Base to the community as well, because we do rely on the community to help keep our airmen safe. And so we hope that that partnership will continue to grow and flourish and just create stronger bonds here within the local community. So again, thank you for the invitation this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come and listen and to provide some responses. And I'll turn it over to the next individual. All right. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Keenan Wald. I'm the Lowndes County Administrator for Community Counseling Services, and we provide mental health services to our community. And so I just wanted to introduce myself, and if anybody had any questions afterwards or wanted to come up and speak, I just wanted you all to know who I was. So we are connected with the schools. We have our locations around town as well. So thank you.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our questions and answers. The first question is for Dr. Labat. What are you doing about all the fighting going on in the school system?
Okay, first, fights in the school system is nothing new. They fight in Bay St. Louis and Biloxi, and they fight in Columbus. I will say the uptick in fights in the school district, I think, is a direct result to mental stress and trauma in the in the community. I was at the game on Saturday, a tournament. We won both games, but it was a fight in the stands. You know, an altercation. Thankfully, you know, our school resource officers and our local police department was there. But preventive measures are there. You know, Chief Brown and I were talking. We said, you know, there are no metal detectors at Kroger and Walmart, or people vigilantly watching your kids from class to class like they are in a school district. And so we try our best to try to prevent fights as much as possible. I remember talking to Chief Brown last week about someone that we had deterred a fight to the point that we had observed the kids, and they couldn't do it at school, so they got checked out of school and went and fought in community. And so a lot of this starts with us at home, building relationships with our children and family, and requiring our students to think through and not pick up guns and fight when there's emotion involved. And so while we are always in preventive measures to prevent fights, we are always in the ongoing being very vigilant in schools to make sure that we're doing the best we can to prevent fights. I also want to say to Columbus on the bigger picture, there's been an increase of violence all over the nation, uptick in fights. We are in a pandemic and headed toward COVID 3.0 in the next couple of months. And so when there's stress and trauma and high emotions, when there are things that are happening in homes and communities, it impacts the schools. And so as far as preventive measure, we'll continue to be vigilant. I think we have one of the best social emotional wellness programs in this area. I think we respond to our students well. I think we are working hard with anger management to assist them in dealing with their emotions so they don't fight. But you know, I know what would happen to me if I fought in school for my daddy and my mom. And so a lot of accountability starts with ourselves and individual and community, and a lot of things we've discussed today. Next question.
Are you going to hire more SROs?
We are in the process of evaluating our SRO and personnel. I'm also very interested in getting more social workers in our school district to deal with some of the issues that we're dealing with. We always have proactive measures in what we do in the schools, and so we'll be evaluating SROs and more social workers in the schools. These things cost money. Money's not important when it comes to being safe for students, but we want to make the right decisions and making sure that we do what's needed to protect our students.
Next question. What is the school district doing to show support for the in-house police and security department and to try to give their resources to recruit more SROs in the district? The district is down to SROs in the whole district.
Yeah, some of these issues are directly related to some of the recent inflation and economic developments, economics with wages. And so we are working on that. There are specific tests that have to be passed in order to become an SRO. That's a very difficult test because if you're an SRO, the likelihood you could be a police officer, then we have to compete with city wages. And so there's a lot of complexities in that. We are evaluating that. We continue to have open positions to try to find the best. We're probably going to have to recalibrate a lot of our wages to make sure that we keep great employees in our district. And so those are things that we're looking at, but we're always looking for great SROs. But it's a lot of training that goes into that and specific tests that are needed to become an SRO as opposed to a security officer.
Next question. Can parents be held responsible for sagging pants ordinance?
I don't know, but we enforce it in schools. You know, quick gestures of telling them to pull up their pants. We're always going to reinforce them to wear their attire in a more respectful manner. But as far as ordinance, that's a Chief Shelton question as far as parents are concerned. We just know that we have rules and guidelines within the schools and expectations of how we want them to dress while they're in a school environment. But Chief Shelton, I don't know if there's an ordinance, if you want to take that question. But we have great students that are doing great things. We have very high expectations of them to perform academically in everything that they do. We do make sure that we enforce them wearing proper attire, you know, and we want them to be as respectful as possible when they're in a community. But I think it goes back to us and the household and decisions that are made there. But we just know in school that we always try to enforce that. Dress code is important to us. But we have, you know, 1,000 things in priority order that we have to also worry about, like proficiency, growth, academics, college and career readiness, enlistment preparation. Shelton, do you want to take that question? Because we can't, that's one thing about the school district. There's only certain things we can do to hold parents accountable. So I'll let Chief Shelton handle that question.
What has to happen, the person has to commit a crime. So if a person does not commit a crime, we cannot take any action. So when we start talking about juveniles are a little bit different. An adult, I can arrest them, but on juveniles, we can charge them, and we have to take them to juvenile detention center. But when we start talking about looking at a child and trying to see what he's going to, at any time I can stop a child and see what he's doing and see what he's up to make sure that he's not doing anything illegal. But as long as the child's not doing anything illegal, generally we're not going to approach him. So what we have is, during the daytime, we have the daytime curfew where we have the compulsory school law where they have to be in school between 7 and 3. Then at nighttime, we have our nighttime curfew. If they're juvenile now, we can take action. But again, it's just like anybody else. We have to have a legal reason to stop them. If they're jumping up and down, running and screaming and hollering, which is sometimes children do, I can talk to them. But in order to detain that person and to take him into custody, I have to have a legal reason. To a certain extent, the parent can be held accountable. They can, when the child goes to youth court and goes through the youth court process, they'll have a detention hearing and they'll go before, and the parent can be in some cases. Like when we start talking about criminal cases, we're talking about child abuse or something like that, or we can, of course the parent can be brought in on that. But again, for misdemeanor stuff like that, they'll go to youth court and the parent can be held. Again, that's something, again, that we're gonna have to work with our youth court system as well as to see what we can do. Children can be put on probation, or they can give them certain sanctions that the youth court can place on that child. But again, it all starts with us having to have a legal reason to stop.
As it relates to attire and students, that I want us to make sure that we understand that when we see a child, if their pants are down, that they're still a child. They're still a child. And sometimes when you're a child, you do childish things, right? And so we just have to continue to work upon, setting some guidelines within the school environment, outside in community, about expectations. But I just don't ever want us to forget, as a community, when we talk about the 71 times or the issues with violence, that they're still children.
All right, next question. How many guns have been found in CMSD this school year? Are metal detector days random? Why are metal detectors not used daily?
All right, let me get all of them so I can knock them all out. Okay, so to date, I hadn't been aware of any guns. We have found gun paraphernalia on students through our backpacks and checks and metal detectors. And so we found knives, and those kids have gone to hearings and have been put up for expulsion, but no guns to date. But we have found paraphernalia related to guns and AR-14s in the bags of some of our students. So that's that answer. No, and I talked about that earlier. We generally run the metal detectors 3 times a week or after a major event. How come they're not used daily? They can be used daily, probably in recent, I don't know, Kim, Craig, we've been using them daily. I've explained this to my board of trustees that that's a 2-hour process. We'll get a phone call, a child didn't get English in another moment because, as educators, sometimes we can't win. But safety is always a priority. Our teachers do a great job. The process is very, very detailed. It's not just them going to a metal detector. We check their bags, their coats. We check everything that's on them of every single child. And you think about Kim Gardner and Craig Chapman, that's 900 students every single day, every day. And so it seems easy for the community, everyone, to throw out numbers, bring papers to meetings, and make decisions, but the work is being done, and we'll continue to do it. So when we're in heightened situations, like some of the things that have happened in the community, we do run them more regularly. But like I said, at the high school and middle school, that's a 2 and 2.5 hour process. The time doesn't bother us, but it's just a very, very, very daunting situation. But we do what we need to do to provide safety for our students. And they're not random. We usually do, I leave that to the discretion of the principals. Sometimes there's heightened situations on the weekend that they have to run them Monday through Friday. So I would say that they're not random, that we're constantly looking at what's happening in the community and adjusting as necessary.
What are the qualifications to be a mentor in this community?
Community counseling.
I guess there's several answers to that question. When I was at a meeting and, some of the guys says, look, you're walking down the street, you're dressed in a suit and tie. It may be difficult for you to relate to certain kids. I go down, they say I go down with a pair of Jordan and jeans. And so we understand the dynamics of that. Right before the COVID, about, I guess, 16, maybe close to 20 black men, Representative Kabir, Brother Scott, George Irby, the former mayor, the police chief, the policeman, we all wore coats and ties. We went in to talk to I call them the Pee Wee football team. I know they don't want to hear Pee Wee. It's the middle school football team. And we were beginning to interact with these young men. One of the interesting things that happened the second time we met with them, it was like a town hall meeting. And they began to tell us about the shootings and different things going on in the community. And the chief and some of the others says, why don't you call 911? They said, look, we do not want them to do anything to our sister and our mama. So there's a fear in our community, not just with children, with grown people. So to be a good mentor, we just got to have some children. And that's the reason we want to form this youth organization, because we can bring them in and structure and let them tell us what they want to do. Years ago when we would carry on major trips, we'd raise money, and we were there to talk to them. And there are those of us that still willing to do that because it's important. And I'm hoping that some of you all, especially men, are signing up so we can share with these young boys and some of these girls what needs to happen. Because I tell you, it takes away my breath. I was on Facebook the other day, and I saw a fight in the Walmart parking lot. And it was a bunch of women, and they were fighting, and you know what? People were just standing around looking. It just made a knot in my stomach, because we just closed our Venetian blinds like we don't want to do anything. So for those of you all that sign up, we'll have a meeting, we'll come in and try and get it organized and decide what way to go. For those of you all that want to be a part of the Crime Prevention Task Force, is that, we'll let you know of the public meeting. But all of us can be mentors. Is some of the best knowledge I've gotten about street stuff been some of my friends that's been to Parchman. One of my best friends, a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. And I love to listen to his story because he's been there. So all of us have a role to play in terms of being mentors. And so it's not a one-shoe-fit-all. So if you're interested, let's be a part and make something happen.
I just want to reiterate, if you would like to volunteer for the for the school district, you have to go through a background check. We usually work through United Way if you would like to volunteer. So if you're interested, either sign up in the back and we'll get in touch with you.
Next question. Would the dramatic increase in shootings in 2021 be tied to the pandemic? And how do the numbers compare to other communities like ours? That's any panelist. So the question again is, would the dramatic increase in shootings in 2021 be tied to the pandemic? And how do our numbers compare to other communities like ours?
Good evening. My name is Scott Cologne. I'm the district attorney, and I want to thank Dr. Labat for inviting me and for putting together this community meeting. Yes, that's an easy answer. Certainly, if you do any research into what's going on across the country, gun violence is up across the country. It's up across the country. If you actually look at the 2020 numbers, there was a period of time where crime across the country was actually at the lowest point it's been in decades, because you were forced to stay at home. Right, and policing actually, at the beginning of the pandemic, the police had to be very careful about interaction with the public because we really were at the beginning stages of what the exposure was. And so there was less policing and people were at home. So some of those numbers are skewed by the fact that, everybody was at home for about 3 or 4 months, and, there was less active policing and less active engagement with people in the public because we were trying to be careful about exposure. And that was across the country. If you look at the numbers, there was a period in 2020, crime was very, very low. The crime started to increase actually around the George Floyd shooting. And there was a bunch of protests around that, some of the most protests we've had in a long period of time. There was a spike in crime, and it's continued in 2021, and a lot of it is gun crime. There are some crimes that are down in 2021, but a lot of it is the crimes that are up across the country are shootings. That's up across the country, big cities, mid-sized cities, small rural cities like Columbus. It's across the board. If you look it up, across the board, you're seeing an increase in that. couple things I want to keep in mind. If you ask the public about the perception of crime in Columbus, generally their perception of it is worse than reality. So if I ask a random citizen, how many murders have we had in the city of Columbus this year? Generally what I get is 30, 40, 50, right? We've had 8 murders this year, right? We've had years since I've been district attorney, we had 2 murders, 1 murder, 0 murders. Well, we had 1 murder at the very end of the year. But so the reality is, what we really need to make sure the public understand is their perception of crime is not fitting the actual data most of the time. Now, the shootings are very concerning. But do you know what actually concerns me the most about those shootings? Those 300 and something shootings. Most of the time, and probably, I would say more than half, the person that was shot at, and even sometimes the person that has been shot, did not want to cooperate with the police. Refused to say who shot at them, refused to say who shot them. We've had situations, people have been shot in the hospital, 16 years old, 15 years old, F the police. I ain't saying nothing. I don't know who shot me. Well, obviously you know who shot you, right? You know, so the reality is there is a culture around guns with young people that most of us have never experienced or understand. I was in high school. Fighting is not new, Dr. Labat. You're absolutely right. I got into a fight when I was in middle school. I had every break in the world. I've got great parents. I had every advantage. I went to a middle school game, got in a conversation with somebody, got in a fight, got suspended for 3 days. The difference now is people involved in that fight typically have guns. And when you, or knives. And when you have a gun and you're young and your brain's not fully developed and you have not developed the attachment from your parents that maybe you should have, your self-control is lower than it should be, and you therefore are more likely to make bad decisions. And you have a gun, which makes that bad decision worse than you could ever imagine. And so one of the things that is a very difficult conversation to have, and but it's one that we have to have, is about access to guns. We have so many people out here with guns, and we have a culture where you go on Facebook, you see people, AKs, little kids, AKs, all type of guns. And we've normalized that. When we have gun violence in our schools, and this situation is a hard situation to understand. It's not our typical situation. I mean, I don't know if you know the facts around it. It's not our typical situation, the murder of Jada. But just imagine the reaction that's had on those other middle schoolers, because now they have been, gun violence is normal to them. And that's the worst thing you could ever happen to a child, is that gun violence could be normal to you. We have to make healthy communities that is not normal. Okay? So I could keep going, but I think I answered the question. I do want to say, I don't know if we get a chance to talk, I do want to talk about restorative justice, because that's something Dr. Labat and I are working on in the school district. We're going to be the first in the state to do it. It's a powerful tool when it comes to responding to fights and interactions and discipline at school. Just to give you a quick example of it. When we had my fight, me and the guy who got in a fight for a stupid reason. I think he picked on me for no reason. Maybe there was something going on. I responded to it in a bad way to show somebody that I was tough. Anyways, after we got suspended, there was no communication from the school. They suspended us, sent us home for 3 days. We came back. Nobody ever asked us why we fought. Nobody ever asked us to sit down and to find out what was going on. And that's what restorative justice does. It tries to get to the root cause of the problem before it escalates into something worse.
Thank you. The next question is, what, if any, work or successes have occurred from the previous crime task force that was led by Leroy Brooks and our former mayor several years ago?
I'm going to say this. I don't want anybody to get angry. 2019, I went to the mayor and city council and asked them would they allow me to form a crime prevention task force. And the reason is that I had served on the National Steering Committee of the National Association of Counties in public safety and crime prevention. I had been sent to a number of conferences around the country that was all free, and I was seeing what they were doing in Phoenix and Charleston and Tulsa. And so I wanted to get involved. We had approximately 60 people that signed up, very diverse group of people in the community. Did all this work. We never got the support from the mayor and council like we should have. That's the bottom line. Okay, here we are, 2021. We've had a crime prevention task force. We've put together a plan, and it's not a panacea. It's a foundation to begin a dialogue. I've gone before the mayor and city council. The mayor was at the last meeting, and I think Councilman Pierre may have been the only other councilman. Councilman Steve Jones is on that crime prevention task force. And as I stated earlier, we asked them, could we stay intact? They said yes. At the last meeting, the question came up, what has the mayor and council done with the plan? And we said, we don't know. And so we left the meeting saying that we were going to invite the mayor and council to give us some direction on where we want to go, because we want to follow protocol. Now, there are some things that were in the crime prevention report we can do ourselves, like this youth organization. There are some other things going on. I did a survey that not very many people got to see. It was with the police department, the mayor and council, the chief, and a few others. And they identified some issues. The policemen, out of the 54, is about 32, 33 patrolmen. And one of the issues that was concerning to them was leadership training. I'm twice over a leadership facilitator. The chief have called me and mentioned us getting together and putting some things together, and I volunteered to do it. So it's moving at a snail pace. But let me tell you the caveat that some of the members on the crime prevention task force have said, that if the mayor and council are not going to take the lead, they're getting off. Because our time is too valuable. I've seen 1,000 studies since I've been in office that's gotten dust on it. And so we are going to, hopefully after the first of the year, meet with the mayor and council and get their ideas, and we're going to push forward. The bottom line is we're all in it together. You know, I'm not going to try and supersede the mayor and city council. I don't think any members on the crime prevention task force. We have a stellar group of individuals on this task force. They bring to the table a set of skills that you know, I didn't mention the district attorney, some of his staff. So we got a good group of people. We just got to get them moving. You know, so you all nudge them. You all nudge them. I'm 6 to 8 years old. I could be on the bank fishing or playing golf, but I don't want anybody shooting in my house. And I don't want anybody bothering my little granddaughter, because then I've got to go and react, and I'm too old to go to jail. So what I'm trying to do is be proactive, but we've got to do it together, and that's what happened. We just didn't get the support, bottom line.
The next comment, the next thing is a comment, not a question, but it says, Dr. Labat, I thank you for doing a great job educating our children. It's been a long time coming. Change is needed. Great job. Next question. What can the community do to support these initiatives to reduce gun violence? And what are the greatest barriers to receiving that support?
First, I just want to say to the Columbus community, I'm the longest serving superintendent in this district for the last 10 years. I've been here 3.5 years. I'm a proud resident and tax-paying member of this community, and I love this community. But I want to say that I want to build some trust with you all. and us to have some dialogue. You know, I had a parent that kind of fussed at me. She really cussed me out this week about an incident at school, and after listening and talking, you know, she has my cell phone number, and we've talked and worked through some things, but I want to build trust, and I don't want this to be a one-and-done situation. So as it relates to the school district, there are no barriers when we work together as far as moving forward and preventing this. I think this is, and I shouldn't say this because of the coast, but I think this is some of the greatest minds I've ever worked with in my career in this area. And I know that we can get this done. I think that, you know, getting organized and finding the blueprint, working with some of these great nonprofits outside, you know, inside or outside the state. We have some people internally that's going to give us some training on critical response and how we can be more effective in schools in dealing with trauma and gun violence. And so I just ask you to walk with me. You can walk in front of me. You can walk by my side and walk with us and our team. But we want to build trust in our relationship, and that starts with dialogue. I'm a pretty heavy hitter. I don't want to look to my admin team. They know me pretty well. But as it relates to expectations, because I just feel that our students deserve a quality of life that's worth living. I love all children. I love children no matter where I was. But, you know, these kids here have, you know, they just deserve more. They deserve to walk outside and play with a ball and not worry about gunshots. They deserve great food and a great education and people in the community that believe in them. And it's just worth fighting for. So I just ask you to continue to work with us. I don't think we have any barriers. I think that's limitations of the mind. And I just want to build trust to us and our administration that they come to work every day trying and doing the best they can to protect children. I also would like everybody to remember that we are in a pandemic. This is the most unprecedented time in education history. And I keep looking at my team because they have done the impossible. They have worked to the bone. They are tired. They are wore out. They leave their families every day and they deal with gun violence and COVID and their family and sickness and difficult things, and they come to work and try to teach kids. If we only had to teach them, our jobs would be much easier, but that's not what we do. We keep them safe, we parent them, we love them, we take care of them. And so I also want to take this opportunity to thank all of our partners and just say that we have no barriers, and as a district, we'll continue to work with all of our partners, nonprofit and CRED and other people to learn to do better about our students in our community.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Dito, and I'm the assistant superintendent. The key word here is we. What are we gonna do? We've talked to the district as far as what the district's gonna do. But as a community, we gotta put a community effort here. And it is a we are gonna do. We have your students 8 hours a day. We teach and preach expectations, those 8 hours. The other part of that day, they go back home, they go to the community. So we are relying on the community to help us with the expectations. Key again is we.
Again, I mentioned, and I didn't ask Dr. Botman, but I should have about this stuff like this. I just think it's very important that we send a message tonight that if we don't do anything else, that somehow we send this message, we post it on Facebook, we get pictures everywhere. So I'm going to try and orchestrate this for those of you that want to be in it. If you don't want to be in it, that's fine. But again, this picture here symbolizes what happened 13 years ago, and I think it's very important that we do this. So what I'm going to ask, I want to do 2 or 3, where did Ms. Brownlee go? Will you be the photographer tonight? I'll pay you, you know. But what I want to try and do, I know we got faculty members over here, and it may be some other faculty members. So I'm going to ask all the faculty members that they would assemble over there. And I'm going to ask the community, and I'm going to ask the elected officials. I see some representatives here, council members, and we'll get a picture. Maybe several different pictures. So what I'm going to ask you all is to just kind of move toward the front as close as you can, with Dr. Labat standing here and you all behind her. I'm gonna do what you say, okay? Yeah, because, okay.
Before our photo op, I want to say this. First, thank you for coming. We have some sign-up sheets back in the back by the exit door. One thing you can sign up for is a critical response team. If you'd like to participate in the critical response team, there's a sign-up sheet at the door. If you don't want to sign up using the form, we have a QR code there. You can scan with your phone and sign up to participate in the critical response team. If you have been a victim of gun violence, or you know someone that's been a victim of gun violence and you need some support in that way, there's also a sign-up sheet for that as well, for the support group. Again, there's a sign-up, there's a sheet, as well as a QR code. If you need support in that way, there's help for you. I want to make sure we leave this meeting with that understanding before we take a picture.
I also wanted to say that this is not a one-and-done situation. We'll continue to work with the critical response team and supporting our people in the community and school that have been impacted by gun violence. But I also want to say we want to have proactive programs, activities in the community, basketball games going all the time, so our kids are engaged in things that are meaningful outside the school district to make sure that they don't get in some of these activities. I also wanted to ask you as a community, if this is something that's important, if you think that we need to come together every quarter to just discuss where we are, maybe look at the metrics, get the mayor here and this panel here. I just want to ask you if that's something you want to do quarterly. We don't want to be one and done. We want to continue to work towards a solution and be proactive. That's something we could do as a district, is provide these meetings quarterly to ensure that we're continuing engaging in conversation on how we're going to continue to make this a great and thriving community. So that's something you would like, quarterly meetings? Yeah, okay. I'm sure my staff is like, yeah, she wants to host everything. That means all of us. So, but we don't mind. You know, we do the work. We want to make sure that we keep the community engaged because we're all one. And so we'll just plan as a district to host these quarterly to continue to engage in conversations on how we're going to make this community and turn this thing around here. So we'll gladly host that as a district, and thank you.
What I want to do is, here's a picture. If you all just kind of make your way to the front and move in, and Dr. Labat will be in front. Those of y'all that want to be in the picture, just make your way up